Hey, everybody. Welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. I am your host, Mr. Kurt Wookert Jr., rocking out live from South Florida. We've got Mr. Alex Vidal at the keyboard, playing the role of executive producer here on the show. So, that's the executive is a title that I'm granting him, and no one can stop me. So, if you're watching live, please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, let your friends and family know that the only show that matters in the entire blockchain ecosystem is on right now. This is their only opportunity once a week to interact live with the single greatest mind that does a podcast on Tuesdays at 2 in the Bitcoin economy. So, our guest today is going to be Brayden Langley. His I'm gonna make a CIA joke. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna make a CIA joke. Okay, so he is the CTO of Project Babbage. He'll be on in a couple of minutes here. If as we prepare ourselves, prepare our minds, hearts, bodies, bless this show to our souls. I want you to check my pinned post on X, and if you follow me anywhere else around the ecosystem, you should read my article today. So I haven't talked a lot about any of this yet, but there's been a lot of really, really interesting news coming out of Bitfinex, which is for the unengaged or the disengaged, is the sister company to Tether. So they're owned by a holding company called iFinex. And iFinex is like the shadiest company potentially in the history of the world. And that's saying something. So, but there's been a lot of very interesting news about stuff going on over at Bitfinex, which is already a very controversial company in the space. It used to be more controversial. They don't get talked about very much anymore because they were heavily superseded by companies like Binance, but they are still and remain part of the what I like to call the Tetheral reserve system in a very big way, in that they share executives, they share liquidity and all kinds of other stuff between all these entities, and they have recently maybe been hacked. The degree of which is unclear. The impacts we don't know, but the hacker group claiming that they have literally all client data. Now, if that's the case, Bitfinex has been a black market money laundering operation for, and this is not hyperbole. Like I will say this about lots of companies in the space, but Bitfinex for a very long time was sort of the shadiest and most liquid exchange for literal criminals, going back 10 plus years now. And again, is very, very, very closely related to Tether, which is itself maybe the biggest corporate fraud that has ever existed. So I wrote an article kind of breaking down a little bit of the history, and then a little bit of what's going on lately, and then also some very weird tweets from their executives and some other stuff going on. Could be something. It seems like where there's smoke, there's fire, which makes me think of Mr. Vidal's background picture, which is the "this is fine" meme, and Alex's head floating right in the middle of it, which brings me a lot of joy, frankly. So again, if you're watching live, please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, let your friends know that we're live. Share this across social media. It does us a whole bunch of favors if you let people know that we are live, because I would like to get your questions. I get questions about Project Babbage in my DMs because I'm supposed to know everything about Bitcoin, I guess. And this is your opportunity if you have questions about Project Babbage, I guess primarily from a tech standpoint, but also I'm sure Brayden's got a whole bunch to say about all kinds of other things. This is one of your opportunities to bring this up. So feel free to ask directly any question about anything, and likely the Bitcoin related questions will get answered. So we have an ad. We are, going to London very soon here. So if you're excited about the London Blockchain Conference, it's getting a little short on time for setting such a thing up, but I don't even know what my broadcast schedule is. I think we're doing next week's show, and then I'm likely off the week after, maybe. Given that there's travel, I don't make my own calendar for very obvious reasons. So we're going to cut to an ad, and then as we come back from the ad, we will kindly usher in Mr. Langley to talk about the CIA and Project Babbage. Mr. Vidal, play the. I like it. This is spicy. Hello, Mr. Langley. How are you?
Good to be here. Thanks. I'm doing good.
Good. Yeah. I imagine I am not nearly as clever as I think I am with the CIA jokes.
I actually use that sometimes when people ask how I spell my last name. I'll say, "Oh, Langley," just like the CIA. So
there you go.
not a part of the CIA, but if I could, I can say so.
But you can at least on the resume that's got to get you to the top of the pile, I imagine.
Exactly.
So from the Project Babbage account, cannot confirm or deny affiliations with the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. So perfect. All right, Brayden, you guys. First of all, one of the busiest groups of people in the BSV space. I remember the first time I heard Ty speak. It feels like maybe 2 years ago. He was up on stage. I think it was at the CoinGeek New York conference. It was the first time I heard him speak. Shook his hand, met him there pretty briefly. I didn't know who he was before that day. But since then, it just kind of seems like the instances of Babbage and Babbage related people continues to trend upward.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit of insight. How long have you been with the project? What's your role, and if you could fill me in on kind of like your day-to-day at the company. I'd love to know like who you are and what you do here, please.
So I've been with Babbage and for about just over 2 years. So I have my background is I've been interested in programming for a while and software development. I got my bachelor's degree in software engineering from OIT, and through a friend I met actually while I was in college, I heard about Ty and Project Babbage, and he was looking for people to kind of join the team and help him develop some of his ideas out. And around that same time, I was starting to see some of I think probably around 2020, some of the kind of hype around NFTs and stuff. And I've actually haven't really before I met Ty, I didn't really get into blockchain or Bitcoin like hardly at all. I heard about it briefly. But I saw the hype on NFTs, and I thought that there was something there, but I didn't really like what I saw with all the scams and like all the non like real utility that was there.
Sure.
And so I saw what Ty was doing. I was like, wow, this seems like more in line with my values, and it seems like something I could get behind. And went from there. And my role was, I guess, a CTO, whatever that means. I do a lot of like engineering work, a little bit of business, a little bit of design. So kind of wear many hats on the team. But that's a little bit about me.
As it should be with any startup, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's funny. I always, it's really interesting the type of people that come from a like, oh yeah, I've been involved for 10 years and like I've done this and this and that, and then you get the people who are like, I don't know, I used ETH and did this for a little bit and like made my way over here because it didn't scale or whatever the feedback was, and then you get people like yourself who are a little bit like, I don't know, like kind of vaguely heard about blockchain stuff, didn't like the culture until I saw a BSV related thing. So actually, you mentioned values alignment, which is, I think, really key in any business sphere. But I think something also that a lot of people are a little bit afraid to address. Like people, their company values are vague axioms and that kind of thing. And Ty, to his credit, is very, very outspoken, not shy to argue and that kind of thing. So,
Hmm.
something, by the way, that I really respect about him.
Yeah.
So what do you remember what the moment was? Like, was there a singular thing? Was it a, political,
Mm.
philosophical, or was it tech related? Like, what
Hmm.
is the value that made you say, you know what, I'm going to take a a
Mm.
C-level position at this company?
Yeah. I'd say primarily the data ownership side of things, and like the kind of the three things that we have right now. Where if you see our new shirts coming out in London, we'll
Yep.
have some there probably.
Nice.
More privacy, less passwords, and better incentives or integrated payments. Um, and so like the idea of creating a future of the internet where people can actually own their own data, right? Where it's not centralized, data silos, big companies that are in control of the user's data anymore, but we put the focus on the users, as far as like even with app development, where there can be better incentives, better user experience that can be created when users actually are more in control. So that kind of
Yeah,
was the main thing.
for sure. So let's dig into that a little bit, because there's been, I don't even know at this point. There's been a few attempts at this, like,
Mm,
hey, go our direction. Like, you have the sort of gate to chain group that seems, super integrated with things like stars tokens, and so they
mm,
start to
mhm,
make, like, for better or worse, start to make decisions about, we're going to support this token protocol or this key
mhm.
derivation path, or like these kind of things.
Yeah.
Now, I off the top of my head, I can think of like half a dozen versions of this, just in BSV. So you
Mm,
sort of had like the unwriter stack, for example, which
yeah.
used a bunch of stuff. Some of it still gets used, some of it doesn't get used at all anymore.
Hmm.
Same with, like, yeah, you had kind of a run token ecosystem, and that
Yep.
had a lot of its, stuff that was built to be adjacent to it or integrate directly to it, and that kind of thing. So what is a key differentiator in the Babbage approach that might make someone say, okay, I would go this direction
Mm,
instead of, any other thing that exists in the
mhm.
universe?
Yeah, that's a good question. And um, I think primarily, probably the main thing is like we're actually trying to, start initiatives around standardization. And like there's the
Yeah,
whole BRC thing that we've worked on, right? With different specs, trying
which
to
is
open
really
up the,
cool, by the way.
yeah, there's a lot there. Ty can probably say them by name and by heart. I maybe like one or
Yeah.
two. um, but yeah, just I guess started the conversation with different people, maybe, Gate to Chain or other companies. Like, let's sit down and like, let's kind of standardize some of these because once we can kind of come to an agreement, at least on the lower levels, there's so much innovation and creative stuff that can be built on top of that. But if the foundations are constantly shifting, then app developers are always struggling to try to keep up with different
Mhm.
wallets that they want to support and having to rewrite their apps many times. So I think that's a good place to start, and maybe what slightly differentiates Babbage.
Yeah. So it's funny. I can't remember who said it, but it was something about standards in tech,
Mm. Hmm.
and that, you get standards organizations, you get people that are like, think about the organizations that they come up with standards for things like, what should a USB plug look like, and that's like a
Yeah, true.
conglomeration of like IEEE and, and lots of
Hmm.
like orgs that I think a lot of people don't readily understand,
Yeah.
but there are
Uh-huh.
groups of
They're
people that
there
are,
though. Yeah.
yeah, that are like debating, like, well, this is what the USB-C standard is going
Yeah.
to mean
Right.
globally. And the joke is always that they never actually deprecate other standards. When you try to become the standard, you just
Mm.
become the next standard that also exists.
True. Yeah.
So, what do you
Mm.
think? Like, could you give an example or two? Like, what is something that differentiates Babbage specifically in your, the way that you would go about something,
Hmm.
like, and not to get super spicy, I'm not asking you to call anybody out, but
Yeah.
like, what is something that perhaps people are doing wrong, and that if they would simply, listen to a
Mm.
podcast of, one of your guys, like, Ty does a lot of
Yeah.
good
Sure.
streams, the
Yeah.
BRC stuff is actually very clear and
Hmm.
well documented. Like, what is something that you wish people would just kind of like, just take and adopt and run with?
Okay. Um. Yeah, I mean, Ty has lots of videos on this topic, which
Yeah.
people can go check out on our YouTube channel.
Oh, I know.
Great content.
Yeah.
I guess what I'll say is like first thing that kind of comes to mind is there's some things around not to get too in depth, but like the key derivation side of things. There's BIP32 versus like what we use at Babbage is type 42. And so there's some privacy improvements that can come from doing what's called counterparty encryption between two people for increased privacy, right? So that's kind of one thing that pops into my mind about maybe something that we do differently here. Another thing would be supporting like all types of transaction types and tokens. So if you just build your systems just in regards to, I guess, the UTXO model, where you're not, necessarily worrying about the specific protocol, but you can support many different types just by supporting like the UTXO.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I always tell people, let Bitcoin be Bitcoin.
Yeah. Right.
Well, one of my criticisms, and I really liked run tokens a lot for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But they always had a scaling problem. They always had a back to Genesis problem. Like there were issues with them, and part of the reason for that is that they simulated state, or they managed state in some way. Which state is that thing that just kind of makes it like, okay, all resources need to need to be calculating the state of this thing. And that was just sort of a fundamental issue in that people think about tokens typically with their mind on Ethereum, because a lot of people come from Ethereum and they're like, okay, well, this is how Ethereum works, and so I want to build tokens that look like ETH tokens. And they don't work for a few reasons. I mean, not that they don't work, but they certainly don't scale.
Some problems. Yeah.
So what would be, in your opinion, this doesn't even necessarily have to be like Babbage's solution, but what do you think is something that people maybe are should be thinking about differently in regards to something like that, like simulating state in a different place, or like how can we fix some of these problems, which admittedly is something like I also am working on, because I want tokens to work really well in BSV, and the problem is defining them in such a way that actually makes sense and actually scales. But then the second thing is, once we've done that, how do you get anyone to use them versus all the other options that they could also use?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So we're working on like we've developed our own like overlay solution, and we're working to, open source some of that in the coming months and stuff. But, there's the whole indexes versus overlay, and maybe there's a place for both. Right. But
which is my position, by the way.
Yes. Okay. So overlays, in my opinion, are great because you can track, a subset of the transactions. Like I could spin up an overlay node right now and then just track all the tokens related to songs, a particular song protocol or a social media protocol. So, there's scalability benefits there, I think, because you don't have to track all the transactions that might be related to other different protocols you don't care about. So you can kind of just choose which protocols you want to support on your system. If you need to validate the token, look at the UTXO data, parsing it out however you need to confirm it's a valid token, before emitting it to your overlay. So I guess things around that would be good, because then you could kind of just support whichever ones you want to choose to support.
Sure. I think that's smart. Like, keep it simple. Let people make their own choices. So one of the other things that you mentioned, and that Ty has brought up really since day one, is this concept of a more private internet, password stuff, optional encryption, and these kind of things. Now I know you guys have a big toolbox. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like what does that look like practically? If someone were to say, okay, I want to build an app, and I like the way this Project Babbage thing sounds, like what's the first thing you do? What's the second thing you do? And then what does your project look like after, the end of week one, and attempt to implement? Like what are the steps that are happening there?
Okay. Yeah. So if we just talk about just authentication, right? Like traditionally, if I'm going to go build a Web2 app, I have to think about how am I going to, have users log in? Are they going to, create username, password, phone number, and then am I going to save that data somewhere? How am I going to make sure it's secure? Data breaches happen because all the data is, in one central location. And so we've developed a few tools. Namely, Authorite is one that kind of comes to mind, which is a wrapper around the Fetch API for those people that are familiar with that. And so what it lets you do is you can just allow users to, like, let's say you have a backend server and maybe it just gives people the weather, for example. And instead of maybe using the API key or requiring someone to log in, you can just authenticate users from their MetaNet identity. So we have the MetaNet client, which is like basically our wallet, and you have your identity key associated with that. And so if a developer wants to allow users to authenticate with their MetaNet identity, they can just use the Authorite software, and like it's basically a mechanism to communicate between a client and a server. Maybe that's not the best way to describe it, but it basically lets you do some communication between the two.
Yeah. Sure. So some kind of handshaking with Bitcoin in the middle, essentially.
Yeah, so it's like the key derivation, I guess, between your keys. So the server has a key, you have a key, and then you can do the handshake to establish your identity. Kind of.
Cool. Well, let's grab a few questions. We already got a few starred questions, and then maybe that'll encourage A, more conversation, and B, more questions.
Yeah.
So Guy or Gui, depending on what planet, or sorry, what side of the planet this name was given from. Question for Babbage. Can you tell us more about the Babbage Trust Services Certificate Authority, which is something I didn't know existed? So educate us all, please.
Okay. Yeah, Ty just recently created a document. Actually, we both did, and we kind of reviewed it. And so what this is in the MetaNet client, there's something called the Trust Network. And so if you download the MetaNet client on your computer and you open it up and you log in one time, you'll see a tab that says the Trust Network. So in there, you can specify different entities that you trust. And these are people or entities that would certify who other people are. So you're free to choose different people that you trust. And one of the people that you can trust is the Babbage, Certificate Authority, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's just a certifier we run. And the whole point of this is so that, let's say you're using some app, and maybe like PurePay, for example, is an app we have for sending payments. So if you send me a payment, it's going to pop up with your identity key. That's who I'm going to see it's from. But maybe I don't know who you are, right? Like, who is this random person sending me money? Unsolicited payments, maybe I don't want it, right? And so there's this identity key. And so we need a way to resolve that to some sort of information that is more human understandable, like a first name or a Twitter handle. And so in the Trust tab on your MetaNet client, you can trust people. So if you trust the Babbage Certificate Authority, it will resolve not necessarily your identity. That would be another certifier like Social Cert, which you can link your Twitter handle to your MetaNet identity, and then I would see your Twitter handle.
Yep.
But the specifically the one that's the Babbage Certificate Authority, that's for like certain protocols, like the NanoStore protocol or the Authorite protocol, all those different things that you'll see in your MetaNet client when you're using it, because different apps will grant permission to access certain baskets that you have UTXOs in or different things like that. And instead of having that information show up with like not very good descriptions and things like that, it's just a way to register that type of information.
Sure. How is that stored? Because these kind of things I always think sound great, and then I always picture, I have a cybersecurity background, so for me, I'm immediately like, all right, how do the bad guys want to leverage their way into this? Where is it stored? How is it stored? That kind of thing. Is the ultimate identity key, or whatever the thing that is used, where is it coming from? Is it client side? Is it server side? Is it on the blockchain, or where does it come
client side? Yeah, client side on the user's device.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then the certificates can be they can, let's see. Yeah, when you issue a certificate, that's put on chain. That's record of the certification.
Cool. Here's a question from Nelson. I see a few apps in the Babbage app catalog. More than a few. It's a catalog is the right word for it. Saying where should I start? And that is, I think it's still again like Okay, cool. I'm going to build with Babbage. So what does
Yeah,
that look like?
where do you start?
Download which client, which thing, like, is it, what operating systems, like
Yeah. Mhm.
what is my
Okay.
minimum viable stack in order to
Yeah.
kick off?
If you want to first just get started just testing out an app before you even maybe developing your own, you could download the MetaNet client. Just go to the Project Babbage. There should be a button right on the homepage. Once you have that downloaded, you can create your account once, and then the To Do app is a good just kind of first starter app to check out. It lets you create to-do list items, which are Bitcoin tokens, and then once you complete the task, you can redeem it, get your coins back. Um, and then there's also a tutorial we have on our docs. If you go to projectbabbage.com/docs, there's a tutorial where you can work through it and create your own version of the To Do app. That's
Cool.
probably a good place I'd start.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring up another one, Mr. Vidal. I see. Missed the beginning here. Tell us about the CPU. Yeah, indeed.
CPU.
Tell us about the CPU, sir.
All right. Okay. So yeah, that is a pretty cool project that we've been working on. It's funny, actually, the kind of seed for that idea, um, I thought of when we were flying back from the S-Script hackathon. I was just sitting in the plane, had some time to kill, just kind of thinking through what would be a really cool
Yeah.
submission for that. And so I thought of the seed idea, and I shared it with Ty, and he's like, "Oh, what this means? We can do loops on Bitcoin with multiple transactions." So we kind of brainstormed from there and developed the Bitcoin CPU.
So I mean, what's a very simple but practical use of Bitcoin CPU? I saw the brief on it, but for those, it's like, okay, why do I need a CPU on the blockchain?
Yeah, the cool part about it is it allows you to over the course of several transactions. So normally you just have one transaction, right? And then you have a S-Script, contract which locks some UTXO, and then if you can, meet the requirements of the contract, you can unlock and spend the Bitcoin, right? And so what this allows you to do is have multiple chain transactions together, which manipulate the state of the contract. And if at the end of those multiple transactions, it could be hundreds, thousands of transactions even, if you can meet whatever the unlocking requirements are, you can spend the Bitcoin. If you don't, it can be reset to the initial state, which is pretty cool. So you could have even, like Ty did an example of a, what was it, Fibonacci counter. You can compute several numbers of that. You could have some arbitrary problem, any arbitrary problem that you want solved. And if someone can get the solution, they could get the bounty, which I thought was pretty cool. If not, maybe it increases the bounty, right?
Super.
So you have incentive there.
It actually reminds me, one of the earliest things, and I don't know if this was ever implemented, if this was an idea or if this existed, but I remember in it's gotta be 2013 when I was first learning about mining, and they were talking about general home compute projects, of which I'm sure they still exist, but I feel like I haven't heard about one in about 10 years. But that was a thing where people would give their own CPU cycles to solve issues like for universities or things for the public good, that kind of thing.
So would it like pool them together, all the resources?
Yeah, just like give your excess CPU cycles over for like protein folding experiments or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember there was one that was related to calculating star patterns out for a very long time. So essentially, somebody's got to compute like what's the sky going to look like in 10,000 years, and is there anything valuable to know there? Because like, hey, maybe we'll have a gravitational pole shift, like guaranteed, if you know where everything's kind of going.
Yeah.
So anyways, it used to be more common, but since the advent of mining, it's obviously a lot more profitable to just like spin up a GPU rig and mine whatever your nonsense tokens are at this point. But that reminds me that I remember somebody had proposed and maybe implemented a Bitcoin related project where they were talking about as a product of the proof of work that you could do some other contribute something to some home compute project. This is frankly my foggiest memory at the moment.
That's an interesting idea though, huh?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what that was.
Yeah, so I mean something like that, if you could purpose like making Bitcoin CPU something that is specifically tailored to, because this stuff is often algorithm dependent, all this other stuff, but if you could optimize it specifically toward actually I just noticed Dave Taylor said SETI, the search for extraterrestrial life, right, which is a interesting, potentially for the public good, but also arguably very wasteful. Like, should public funds go to searching for and it's like, maybe it's a little bit like the CIA. Like, do we need the CIA? Is it a net good? Is it a net bad? And it's like, well, the fact that it ever exists created enemies, and now they need to exist. So same kind of thing with aliens. We'd look like jackasses if we suddenly got invaded from space and no one was ready for it.
I was prepared. Could have the Space Force, right?
Exactly right. So therefore, right, Space Force. So, but I guess the point is being able to crowdsource, like, rather than having Space Force to say, like, and there's lots of special interest groups that care about one thing that could have use of that compute, which actually could be a way to get adoption for the chain, to be like, hey, weird special interest group that has a math problem.
Exactly. Crowdsourcing, problem solving. Yeah, exactly. And then creating millions of transactions, so which means BSV needs to scale. Ta-da! Win-win.
Yeah, I think we just saved Bitcoin, Brayden.
I plan on creating some ideas on that architecture there. So
yeah, no, it's awesome. And I saw that come by. I don't know what it was, 2 weeks ago or something. That idea, Ty mentioned it, and I was like, that's pretty cool, because I've always thought home compute is kind of cool. And actually, who else did? Actually, Hal Finney was. There's a pretty famous public argument between Hal and Satoshi, where Hal is like basically saying, like, I think Bitcoin should be more like a home compute project, and Satoshi was basically arguing, like, no, the proof of work needs to just be Bitcoin proof of work, because it is a costly signal. It needs to be demonstrated opportunity cost in order for consensus to be trustworthy, which is a super it's one of those things, like, don't throw the incentives out the window by doing some other thing with the proof of work. But that was one of the times when Satoshi brought up the word libertarian, because he's saying, like, no, it essentially needs to be competitive. It can't be like, I run this because it's awesome and I'm altruistic toward this ideal. Bitcoin needs to be competitively mined and that kind of thing. So no altruistic commie nonsense, Hal Finney. Sorry, signed Satoshi. Basically. So, anyways,
that's interesting.
So what else do you got going on over here? And or Mr. Vidal, at any point, if you want to pop in more interesting. Oh, here we go from Guy, who was kind enough to phonetically explain the pronunciation of his name in the comments. How does Babbage solve the protocols issue? Can there be multiple protocols inside? I'm not sure exactly what this means.
Protocols, maybe like token protocols?
I would argue token protocols probably makes the most sense. I actually think this is really easy, because you can wrap tokens in any other token protocols.
Exactly. Okay. Just a UTXO, put whatever data you want in there, interpret it how you want. There you go.
Yep. No, I had a conversation a little earlier today before the show with somebody saying, like, hey, can we issue, like, they basically invented wrapped BTC by a text message. I was like, this exists. We can definitely do it. The problem isn't technical. The problem is always legal, compliance, custodial, like that kind of thing. Like, who wants to be the person with a pile of multi-sig BTC that is issued on another chain? Yeah. So here we go. It's getting spicy. When layer 1 tokens with zero conf, ordinals are too clunky with confirmations. What do you, okay, so I would argue that layer 0 or layer 1, like a SAT as a token, I think personally ordinals is as close to that as you can be, because you have to have some secondary thing that defines what the SAT is, that makes it not just a SAT, right? And that requires something external to define that. But do you have a thought? Like, how do you guys treat tokens?
Versus,
what do you guys like to do with tokens?
So you're saying, like
from a protocol standpoint.
Okay, so you're saying, like, if there's this one SAT, then that's a token. It's kind of how your definition of it.
I think that's what he's asking. Yeah, like a layer 1 or layer 0, like essentially. So there's a couple ways to do it. You have like STAS tokens, which are a script
Okay.
that locks up a sat or sats that
Hmm.
define a token. And I don't
Would that be
love
layer
that.
two? Or
Kind of. This is actually, I think the language is bad. I've had this argument with a
okay.
few people
Yeah.
that, I'm talking about layer one, and then somebody like Xiaowei or will chime in and be like, actually, I'd call that layer zero for this reason. And
Too many layers.
the other one who used to do this a lot was Brenton Gunning from Run, who
Okay. Yeah.
would say the same thing, like, well, it's layer zero in this sense, it's layer one in this sense, and it's layer two in another. So what do we call it? I'm like, I don't know, maybe maybe we need
Yeah.
a lexicon to define these things.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not too sure, I guess, but like you can, how we deal with tokens a lot is like you can, push drop data in the token, and then you can interpret that however, depending on what, like maybe you have an issuance ID of when the token's issued, and then subsequent spends or not spends, but like transfers of the token. Maybe you mint a certain amount and then you want to transfer it. Can have record of that, and there's a way to solve the back to Genesis problem where you don't have to go all the way back. But maybe that would be more layer two, and then you can also do stuff in script too. So
Right.
a few ways to do it.
And that's how I would fix it. I see this guy T is commenting other things about it, like the need for an indexer, like what you just defined needs some agent out there to say like, yeah, this is the thing.
Yeah. So
it's just a UTXO.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in Babbage system, let's say there's millions, trillions of transactions coming through. Yeah. How we would solve it is we have an overlay that tracks a certain subset of token, whatever. Right. Maybe it's a song token protocol, the TSP token we have. So you just submit your token to the overlay. It keeps track of it. Maybe you delete it. Maybe you update it. All those state updates get sent through there, and anyone that wants to listen into those updates can, use the lookup service.
Yeah. So he's also saying, like, call it whatever you want. We just need better UX. And he also specifically says you have to inscribe them, wait for confirmations. I don't think that's the case, actually. So here's the problem. Let me explain the problem for anybody curious what the hell we're talking about. When you take a token and you say, hey, I'm gonna like put a mark on the back of this token to call it something else, another database needs to track what has been inscribed on that token. And so it doesn't matter where that database is, that database will have its own scaling issues. So the way that we tried to fix this at Gorilla Pool, like we created Jungle Bus, which is basically an open external validating agent for stuff like that. Now that can be any kind of, they can be songs, it could be tokens, it could be JPEGs on chain, like whatever, that allows you to subscribe to just the things that you care about. And then that subscription is listening for you. And then it will feed you the data for your index. So essentially, whoever you are, you can create a very lightweight index that does this stuff very quickly. Now, our team also teamed up with the people that created the one set ordinals protocol, which is based on the ordinals protocol. And then ultimately that uses Jungle Bus in order to feed what is called the one sat indexer, which is doing that work. So you don't need Jungle Bus in the middle there, but you do because BSV node is a little hefty to run and you don't want to have to filter all data at all times in order to update your indexer. But the bottleneck can be a couple things. It can be the node, the bottleneck could be Jungle Bus, or the bottleneck could be the one set ordinal indexer. Here, I'm going to pop this next one up here. So talking about run was make token or NFT, insta able to transfer and sell. This is also the case with one set ordinals. Now, the issue that you might experience with one set ordinals is actually an issue that also occurred in Run, is that Run was its own agent and had its own indexer and had its own things. And if it was out of sync, not necessarily by Run, but if it was out of sync by the provider, so in most cases, this would be RelayX because that was the primary user of Run protocol. You had to wait for the indexer to catch up. So nobody's waiting for a block. Nobody's waiting for the blockchain. The second you broadcast it to the chain, it's there. The limit is the indexer getting the data from the blockchain quickly? And the answer is it should be. So he's talking specifically about minting foxes. Okay. You, now I also minted Foxes. Now here's what's in the middle of this transaction. It is
Hmm.
blockchain, Jungle Bus, one set indexer, and the Bubble Mint platform where that came
Mm,
from. Now,
okay.
here's what the interesting thing is about this Foxes thing. There was like 10 million. I think the goal was 21 million unique tokens.
Wow.
It's a lot of tokens.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing millions of anything at a
Hmm.
time, there's just volume. It's a bottleneck, right? If if the only thing you've ever done is orders of magnitude smaller and everything is
Hmm.
calibrated for orders of magnitude smaller,
Yep.
and some guy comes out and says, here's a 21 million token project, if everyone's not beefed up in order to do that,
Yeah.
then it is going to take extra time to catch up. So
Yeah.
to answer this guy's question and hopefully tie a bow on this topic, this project would have been impossible to implement on Run. If you
Mm,
did it on Run, the Run indexer could have never kept up
yeah.
with it. So I don't know. I minted some Foxes myself. Most of them worked fine. Sometimes I got errors, and the
Mm,
errors are related to, hold on, we are trying to catch up with the index, make sure everybody's getting what they ordered. It's all on chain fine, but the
okay.
indexer, might take 10 seconds, might take 10 minutes, might take 10 hours,
Hmm.
depending on how many, dozens, hundreds, or thousands of people are trying to use the thing at one time. So,
Okay.
anyways, sorry to
Is there a
go full
separate
tangent.
is there a separate output for each of those? Is that how that one
Yes,
works?
yeah, they're each individual sats. So every
Okay.
fox is a sat
Okay.
and
Wow. Yeah.
needs to be accounted for.
Mm.
So yeah.
That's interesting.
So it's a scaling problem, but it's actually more than any of the software related stuff. Like it's a hardware problem. Like,
Hmm.
21 million tokens is, who
Hmm.
knows, 100 times, maybe 1,000 times more tokens than I think anybody's ever tried to do, like a public mint.
Yeah.
And so
That's interesting.
yeah,
Because you could represent them just as one token actually, and like split them that way. But that's a different way of doing it too.
sure. Yeah, but with one set ordinals, it's each
They each their own
token is a
output with one
sat, and that's
stat. Yeah.
kind of that's the cool part. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Different ways of doing it.
good conversation. Mort saying, will
Mort.
standards enable me to use my login ID tokens with any wallets, Babbage or otherwise?
Yes, that's the
I think that's the
goal.
goal. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we're trying to build our, in the coming months and the end of this year or so, we're trying to work towards open sourcing as much as we can because we want everyone to be able to use our own tools and
Yeah.
not be closed off. But we also have to think about monetization. That's important if you want to have a business succeed. You can't just give away everything for free, right? So
Yeah.
um, but yeah, the long term goal is to work with other wallets and develop these standards, and that way any Babbage tokens you have or any Babbage apps can just be MetaNet apps, and any
Yeah.
wallet can use this common standard. Applications can talk to wallets in the same way, so any Babbage app could talk to maybe a hand cash wallet or yours or Babbage MetaNet client.
Yeah.
That would be the goal.
For sure. Are you speaking? I know Babbage is going to be related. I hung out with you guys in San Francisco. I don't think you and we may have
We
shaken
met
hands or something
briefly,
but
but we didn't really talk.
yeah, it was kind of a high. Like,
Yeah.
I knew that we met, but I don't think we said much. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
first of all, sorry.
No worries. We were
And
in
second
a
of all,
rush.
like, let's actually hang out in London if you're going to be there.
Yeah, totally. So we are doing a presentation. I don't even know what day it is, honestly, but I think it's on the spotlight stage, one or the first or second day of the conference,
Cool.
and we're going to be doing kind of a group presentation. So each of us are going to come up,
Nice.
give a little section. Should be good. There's also the not DEFCON, DevCon,
DevCon.
the day before,
DevCon.
right?
That's your CIA stuff. popping
Exactly.
out, like-
Sorry, slipped up. But Ty's gonna be speaking there, and there's a few other people, and it should be good. Do some more kind of
Cool.
hands-on stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll also be there. The Gorilla
Oh, nice.
Pool and One Sat teams will be
Cool.
presenting as well.
Yeah,
So we can
should
all
be fun.
hang
We'll
out
have
and
to
solve
hang
more,
out.
more world problems.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Let's bring up. I actually the questions keep on coming, so I think we might actually struggle to get through all of them. Guy asking again: can apps built with Babbage access users' MetaNet ID information? How does this work? Like how recursive is this data?
Okay. So very first simple example is we have the Babbage SDK. So you could, go, if you're using React or whatever, install Babbage SDK. And then you could try this function. If you just call get public key, it's going to go and it's going to try to talk over the local host server where the MetaNet client is running, and it will return with the user's public identity key, or it will say, error, no MetaNet client found. So that's a simple check you can do to see if someone has a MetaNet client running, and that's how you could access their public key.
Nice.
There's also other functions, which actually I just worked on implementing not too long ago, where you can do stuff like you can say discover by identity key. Mm-hmm. And so I can make a SDK call, put in someone's identity key, and without actually knowing which entities that person trusts, it will resolve with any, like in the app, it will resolve with any of the identity information of the person that, like I said earlier, with your public key, if you sent me a payment.
Sure.
So yeah, different stuff around that.
Cool. Makes sense to me. Let's keep banging these questions out, Mr. Vidal. I think Babbage is going to kick some serious butt in the future.
That's the goal.
Not sure if that's a question. But here's one. How will Babbage make money in the future? I think this is always, first of all, my favorite question to ask, but also the hardest question to ask, because oftentimes we discover live on the air that there is no monetization path.
Oh no, wait.
I feel like
we're supposed to be running a business.
I'm being a jerk by asking.
I'll just say long term, right? If we run our own services and MetaNet client, we can make money through transaction commissions, right? Make a commission on each transaction. Simple way to do it. Obviously, you need high volume in order to make it profitable.
Yeah.
Other avenues that we're pursuing is contracting work, consultation, possibly licensing agreements. And if any of you guys out there need help developing a Babbage app, just reach out to us and we can work out something that way as well.
Nice. Cool. Let's take another question here, Mr. Vidal. What types of martial arts does Mr. Langley practice? Are you a martial artist, sir?
I am, but so when I was younger, probably around 12, I started taking Shaolin Kempo. I don't know if you've heard of that one. I know you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is cool.
I started in Shaolin Kempo.
Oh, really?
That was my gateway drug to the martial arts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I did that for about 6 or 7 years, I think. Got my second degree black belt.
Nice.
And we did a little bit of so like Shaolin Kempo, pros and cons of it, right? It's with any martial arts. The things that I didn't like as much were like some of the more traditional aspects of it, like looking back now. Forms and stuff. It's good, good for your physical health and, balance and all that. But they also balanced it with like weapons defenses and grappling and stuff like that, which was good. Geared more towards self-defense. And
which lineage? I think all of them stem from the Northeast, but there was like Nick Serio, there was Fred Villari. Who's the other guy? There's
like Kenpo with a Kenpo.
Correct.
And then Kempo. Yeah.
You had Ed Parker.
Ed Parker.
Kempo. Yeah.
I don't think it's Ed Parker. It's the other guy. Fred, maybe.
Was it Fred Villari?
I think so.
Those were big. There were a lot of Villari schools around. So which was actually where I started too. So it was a Villari school.
How long did you do that for?
5 years.
Okay.
And then,
cool.
Yeah. And we did, I'm trying to think. Yeah, we would do, I remember the goal. I was in the middle of learning the Shotung Kwok,
the form.
Okay. When I finally was like, I just can't do this anymore. Because we also integrated grappling. So it was Kempo that introduced me to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then I really liked the jiu-jitsu and said, hey, where do I learn more jiu-jitsu? Which led me down that path. And I was ultimately like, okay, I'm just kind of got tired of Kempo, and then went to an MMA school and all this stuff. But yes,
that's cool. We did a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think my instructor was like a purple or a blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and so he taught us some stuff. And
that was my situation too.
Okay,
my Kempo instructor was like a 5th degree black belt in Kempo, and I think he was a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
That actually sounds about the same. Yeah.
Where are you from?
Oregon, yeah. I don't know if I didn't take lessons out here, did you?
No, I did not. It was Chicago. Master Wayne Wilkinson was the guy that taught me Kempo.
Nice. That's cool. I stopped taking a few years ago, but I still try to practice. And eventually I would like to get into jiu-jitsu more. I think it's good to balance being able to fight standing up and also
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
No, that's
Cool.
awesome. Well, good question.
Yeah.
That came out of the random there from the audience. Wow, we only have about 8.5 minutes left, so
Okay. Went by fast.
let's keep busting these out. Any recommendations for someone who wants to learn to develop on BSV without a coding background? This is always the hardest question, I think.
I mean, I guess it depends if you want to. Are you willing to learn like some coding? Because
Yeah,
I think as we develop,
that is the best follow-up question.
obviously, if you want to use our frameworks and things, you're gonna have to do some coding, TypeScript, JavaScript, which those are pretty easy to start getting into programming. And we have some tutorials. I'd like to do more. I want to kind of get more into like making videos and doing some more tutorials that people can use to learn. And I think as the frameworks develop that we have, we'll be able to kind of simplify some of the underlying layers. Like, for example, instead of having to actually generate an output script for Bitcoin and then put it in the create action call, we can develop things on top. Like there's something called Payment Tokenator, which lets you just easily send someone a payment without even having to generate an output script and do the low level Bitcoin stuff.
Yeah,
which I think could be useful for some people.
Yeah. Which also, I think you guys deserve a shout out for the TypeScript SDK in BSV.
Oh yeah.
One of those things that instead of having to learn like how does Bitcoin work, is really good tool there. So I'm not wearing a hat, but hats off to you guys for
Thanks.
Such
a
good
project.
Yeah. Other question: if a CBDC is issued on BSV, will it work on Babbage?
Sure, potentially.
Yeah,
there's nuances to that, but you can do that if that's something you want to do.
Yeah, I think any asset issued by any protocol can be wrapped to work on any other protocol. So that is like a universal answer that will have variations of the answer depending on from where to where. But
if it's a valid UTXO, it can be tracked by your UTXO management system and work.
Yeah, for sure. Next question. Also, Mr. Vidal, let me know if we need to speed up the pace or if we're right on pace here. What kind of axe do you play? Do you play guitar?
I do play guitar.
So do I.
Oh wow! I think we have a lot in common.
We do.
I've been playing guitar ever since I was like 12. Started out with piano, but now I prefer guitar.
Same.
Okay. Common starting.
Starting to get weird here.
I prefer to play acoustic, but I've been starting to get electric more. I have a Taylor GS Mini. It's pretty fun to play. I think I have what is it? It's not a Gibson. It's like a off-brand Gibson for electric. I don't remember it offhand, but it's fun.
Who makes the other Gibson? I forgot. I have the same thing. I have a Squire Stratocaster over my shoulder that probably can't be seen on camera at the moment.
Nice.
And then my acoustic is a classic Tacoma. I don't remember the which if you're up in Oregon, you may even know Tacoma.
Is it from
Washington.
Tacoma, Washington? Okay.
Yeah, they had a they were like a really big micro brand, and then they went bankrupt a few years back. So now all of a sudden they've become quite collectible.
Yeah.
And I've got the one. There was basically a misdone lacquer job on a specific series of guitars. So I have the severely delaminated Tacoma, but it is like the most gorgeous instrument, like both sound and visual, even with the delamination. I'm like, okay, this thing is
nice.
Really
That's
cool.
Something to hold on to.
Yeah, no, I
cool.
I love that guitar. So, okay, we got 2 more questions and 4.5 more minutes. Babbage guy, will you work with the various BTC protocols? There are like a dozen now.
BTC
what are your thoughts? So I'm a little bit, I think he's talking about, again, like ordinals. Like there are some ordinals cross-pollination, and then they developed like the BRC20 token standard, which then got ported and also works in BSV. Now, just as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, is the Runes protocol, which I actually quite like. I think there's actually some legitimately good ideas in the Runes token protocol.
Okay.
Then there's like Bitmap. There's a bunch of stuff basically that is all sort of tangentially related to ordinals.
Kind of cross between them.
Yeah, just like, okay, if this, then why not,
Yeah.
this new thing. So,
Um,
do you guys do any of that kind of stuff? Do you consider cross chain or atomic lockups or any of that kind of
yeah,
thing?
we don't really do anything like that right now, and to be honest, I haven't looked into that too much. I think if we're open, I think to being like interoperable,
Yeah,
maybe between blockchains, as long as it doesn't limit, because of the scalability and all that
yeah,
stuff, right? So
yeah.
that's kind of all I'll
I
say about that. But
I love the idea of locking up BTC because there's $2 trillion in liquidity over there. So it's like,
mm,
hey, put it in a multi-sig wallet and reissue over here, and you can just use it on
yeah,
BSV. So, which I mean, they've been doing on ETH now for at least 5 years. The
mm,
wrapped BTC is totally a thing. So,
yeah,
then from the Project Babbage account, presumably Ty, the information that denotes the meaning of the token, this is definitely Ty, can be incorporated into the output script in many different ways.
yes,
We allow you to make any script. So
yes. It's
thank
just
you, Ty.
yep. Thanks for the clarification, Ty.
So
Correcting me.
cool. How intimidating is it to be Ty Everett's CTO? It's
Great
Brett, man.
question.
Yeah, is it kind of like being Michael Jordan's basketball coach? In all seriousness, how is it working with such a focused team in Babbage?
Yeah, Ty is great. Great guy to work with. At times, definitely he can have all these ideas. I'm like, okay, wait, slow down. I need to process
Yeah,
this. My brain goes a little bit slower, but no, working with Ty is great, and I just try to make sure that we're staying on track, and I feel like we balance each other out pretty good.
yeah, cool. Important team dynamic there.
Yep.
So, okay, I think we're basically good on questions here, and about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you wish I asked you, or anything that you really, really want the world to know before we wrap up here?
Hmm. Um, Last thing I'll say is, I guess, just we need more people, developing on Bitcoin powered apps. I think we have some cool tools at Babbage, and I'd really encourage people to come check them out. Give us feedback. We have a Slack. You can join it on our website, and just check out the tools. Let us know any areas we need to improve, and feedback would be great.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I'll see you in London. We can spar,
Okay.
jam,
Yeah.
and,
Whatever. Maybe.
yeah, like, and work on some projects together.
Yeah. Totally. That'd be fun.
Sounds good, man. Well,
All
thanks
right.
for being on the show. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. See you soon.
See ya.
Let's bring him out, Mr. Vidal. All right, there we go. So, okay, everybody. With the last minute, I'd like to maybe do a little ASMR with you. No, I'm just kidding. I should never do that, probably. So, everybody, again, I appreciate you. If you could like, subscribe, hit the alert bell. We got 546 people watching live right now. Pretty good numbers. So thank you to everybody who was kind enough to share this across the internet and let their great aunt and their gardener and their mistress or whoever know that, like, hey, it's time for the Coin Geek Weekly live stream. Let's put it on. Let's listen to what Kurt has to say. And for anybody that wants to hang out in London, again, send me DMs. I need to get you booked early because my calendar is already, frankly, filling up. So, excuse me. So remember, and also tell your friends, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do the Coin Geek Weekly live stream, and it is the only show that matters in the entire Bitcoin economy. We should trademark that. I think that's really good. So, and also be good to each other. If we're not good to each other, then what's the point of any of this stuff, right? I hope that the reason you're in Bitcoin is that you want to allow people to cooperate in ways which are better than clubbing each other over the head or otherwise being mean to each other in some other way. So everybody, thanks again. You make it always a pleasure, and you give me something to do every Tuesday. And without you, I'd probably be making a sandwich. So thanks for keeping me just a little bit thinner than I was the week before, everybody. So, all right, see you soon. See you next week. And then we're going to have a weird calendar while I'm in London, but probably seeing more of me via broadcast, just not at the regularly scheduled time. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good afternoon, and Goodbye.